Now these two cameras have a lot of similarities and crossover, and I love them both for sort of different reasons. The Canon Powershot V1 I've loved since I got last year, and I found a way to worm it into basically every single video. It's such a great camera and a great everyday carry camera. And then the Lumix L10 is inching ever closer to my ideal Micro Four Thirds interchangeable Lumix camera of my dreams. So I love them both very much, but there are pros and cons to both, and each camera does things differently and better in some ways and worse in others. So let's figure out which might be best for you. I see these cameras as two sides of the same coin. The Powershot V1 is a video-centric camera that happens to take great photos, and the Lumix L10 is a photo-centric camera that happens to take great video. So what about the sensor size? The V1 has an APS-C sized sensor in it. However, the lens doesn't cover the whole sensor. And it's a similar story with the L10 that has a 4/3 sensor and the lens doesn't cover the whole sensor. So actually, in practice, they are basically the same sized sensor. There's a 1% surface area difference between them. So for all intents and purposes, the same size sensor. The V1 has 22 megapixels and the L10 has 20 megapixels. So again, very similar there as well. The real differentiator and what makes or breaks these cameras is the lens choices. Now, the Canon Powershot V1 is a vlogger's dream of a fixed lens. It has 16 to 50 millimeters f2.8 to f4.5, and the ultra-wide 16 millimeters is great for both photo and for video and vlogging. But it's versatile enough that you've covered all the way to 50mm, and as a street photographer, that's where I'm at. Anyway, anywhere in those focal lengths is a-okay with me, so it's a good, versatile lens. Quite a bit slower than the L10, which has a 24 to 75mm do-everything lens, which is 1.7 to 2.8, so really, really good on the aperture front. Again, it's got great stuff at the long end rather than the wide end, so there's pros and cons to both. Both cameras offer optical stabilization within the lens, but neither of them have in-body stabilization. Now, when it comes to talking to camera, both the Canon microphone, which is brilliant, and the focal length just are great. What I love about it is you don't even need to be like super duper far away. Meanwhile, you really do have to outstretch your arm if you do want to vlog on the L10. It's not designed for this, just a reminder, but it's a bit more jittery. It's not great. What this camera is great for, genuinely, is set the camera down, stand a little bit away and talk. You know the autofocus is going to follow you, but always use a radio mic because the one in this isn't great. Now, if it's aperture that you're looking for, of course the L10 has the edge. It's a very, very wide, wonderful, excellent lens. And I think the best thing about the L10 is the quality of the lens, to be honest. But there's pros and cons to that as well. Have a look at this. The Powershot V1, because the aperture is a little bit more narrow, it enables the lens to collapse to basically nothing. It's such a compact camera when the lens is closed. And while neither of these are strictly pocketable, I do genuinely put the V1 in my coat pocket all the blooming time. And the only reason I can do that is because of how flat it goes when the lens is closed. The L10, comparatively, because of the wider aperture, sticks out a little bit more at all times. So it is still compact, it's portable enough, but certainly not pocketable. The pro of that, aside from the great aperture, is you have more tactile stuff on the lens. You have a physical aperture dial, you have your macro settings, and you have your preset switch on that lens as well. So yes, bigger, but more tactile versus smaller and less tactile. Pros and cons to both. One thing to note about the fall off of both of these cameras is the 2.8 on the V1 lasts for literally 16mm. As soon as you start zooming in, it's narrower, narrower, narrower. It's much more gradual on the L10, and even at the long end, you're still only stopping down to 2.8, so it's still really reasonable. The slowest part of the L10 lens is as good as the fastest point on the V1. Here's a little chart to demonstrate that. I just thought it was interesting that, you know, why it's 2.8 on paper doesn't last very long. So there's some stuff on the Lumix L10 that annoys me, and the V1 does it a lot better. first of all, the speed of the lens. Now, I understand when we're recording video that we would like things to be quite gradual and you get like sort of dad cam vibes. But when you're actually just trying to shift through focal lengths, look how fast the V1 can shift compared to the L10. I don't know if this is a software thing or whether it's like physically a more powerful motor, or maybe it's just got less to sort of go through because it's only a 16 to 50, but either way, it's rapid. You get to the focal length you want without much fanfare, whereas on the L10, it's a little bit slower. There are numerous workarounds, and again, the V1 does this better, and I wish the L10 would implement this. On the V1, you have custom buttons, and on my C1, I've saved it as 16mm, and then on C2, I've changed it to 50mm. So I can be eyeballing a composition and I can turn the dial before I even turn the camera on. And then when the camera very rapidly turns on, it's at the focal length that I want. So C1, 16mm, C2, 50mm. But then most importantly, in that mode, you can still zoom about as you like. The way that Panasonic have decided to do it is with a step zoom feature, which is the dial on the top. That one goes to 35. That one goes to 24, this one goes to 50. And this is good because it'll snap to the focal length you want, but it essentially turns the lens into a prime lens. You can't zoom in and out of it when you're in that mode, and that's very limiting in practice. So I wish you could do it the way Canon does it. It's so cool. And one thing I really didn't consider until actually doing this comparison is the turning off speed. The V1 is more rapid at turning on and getting to your focal length, but it's also faster at turning off. And that seems like a very small thing, and I suppose it is, but particularly with the V1, because I keep it in a pocket, I can take a photo, turn it off, and it's back in the pocket, done. Like by the time my hand moves, the lens is done. With the L10, if I'm putting it back into a bag, it's just that little bit longer while I wait for the lens to retract, and it's a little bit more sluggish, both turning on and turning off. The beady-eyed amongst you may have noticed that there's no filter thread on the Canon V1, but that's absolutely fine because you've got ND filters built in. On the L10, it's just a standard 43mm filter thread. You can buy accessories to like stick, it's a sticky magnet thing that you can stick on the V1, but I've not actually bothered personally yet. I've bought it, but I've not installed it because with the ND filters built in, the reason that I value this camera is I can just pick it up and go, and I don't want to add external accessories to it. Another thing the V1 does better than the L10, and I appreciate that I am dipping into video-centric stuff here. I will cover the photo stuff for the L10. If you're watching this and you don't give a crap about the video specs of the L10, please bear with me. But the stabilization is well better on the V1, and this could be a combination of maybe the algorithm for the E-stabilization is a bit better, but 16mm is always going to be more forgiving than 24. Neither of these cameras would be the first one I'd pick up to walk and talk with, because a camera with IBIS is great, a camera on a gimbal like a Pocket 3 or a Pocket 4, even better still, but you can do it in a pinch with the V1, whereas it's out of the question on the L10. What you can do with the L10 is lob it down, walk away, and take video with it, because the autofocus is superb. So you can still use it for bits and bobs of video clip, but you don't want to be doing that. You just don't. So a great similarity, but just flip side of the coin again, is the reason I love both of these cameras is the ease of use. The Lumix L10 with real-time LUT means that I can pick up the camera and be like, oh, the cat's doing something cute, take a picture, my preset is already applied, I don't have to edit it. I can stick it on my phone and stick it on socials, I'll just keep it for my own memories. Done. Very similar with the V1 on the video side. I basically run it in shutter speed priority and everything else in auto. So the ND filters click in automatically when you need them. The built-in microphone is superb. Everything is just done for you. You know, the autofocus is reliable. You can turn it on really quickly, film a clip of video, and you're done. And it's those frictionless bits of technology that I really value, both personally and as a creator doing this stuff, because there's so many times when I'm out and about and I think, oh, I could film a clip here, and then the sort of prospect of setting something up and making a scene puts me off. But you know, sticking the V1 out, done. Don't need to worry with the mic, don't need to worry about filters, done. Same with the L10 with photography. When I'm too busy to do photography, or when I just want to take something casually, the L10 is there. The lens is super versatile and my presets are already applied. So I love them both for the same reason, just in photo and video terms. There's some more stuff that they both do brilliantly. There's a lot more similarities than differences, I would wager. First of all, they both have leaf shutters built into the lens. They both have flippy screens, and they both have custom numbered dials for days, so you can really set it up exactly to your needs. The other thing that's quickly shooting up my must-have list, well, there's two things actually. First of all, is a photo and video switch. So you can set the cameras up completely differently depending on what you're shooting, and both cameras have this. And then the second thing is it's all single-handed. You can turn the camera on over here, you can do photo and video over here, you can change your focal length over here, you can do everything. So when you're at a festival and you've got a pint in one hand and your camera in the other, you can still snap away. And that is important in my book. Not just for the pint thing, but just in general. And something that Canon don't shout about, at least that I've heard, I literally stumbled upon it in the menu, is both of these cameras have like an MP4 Lite codec. And now, if you don't know what this is, it's, you know, you've got all these fancy video features, but the payoff is the file sizes are huge. I have such a quantity of video in any given week that I just use MP4 Lite. I'm using it right now. All my B-roll is MP4 Lite. It's great. It's just wonderful quality and a fraction of the size. And there is a very similar codec built into the Canon as an option as well. And the second benefit of that is all these fancy pants codecs, like your MOV files, you can't transfer them to your phone. And if you can transfer them to your phone doesn't know what to do with them. So if you want a seamless transition between camera to your phone, to the world, use this MP4 Lite codec or the Canon equivalent, and you can. So, yay! Canon should probably advertise that more, because I didn't know. Now, inarguably, it's a photocentric camera. There are some things that the L10 does that knocks the socks off V1 and it just can't compete with. First of all, as I've talked about, real-time LUT. Excellent. On the physical side, you have an OLED EVF, which is very high quality and beautiful. And I know an EVF is a deal breaker for a lot of people, so that will wipe the V1 out before we've discussed anything else. The other thing is, because you do have the extra tactile dials and all the extra things like your aperture ring, you know, it's a very nice tactile experience when it comes to photography. And I'm becoming more and more into that as I progress. I think all cameras are good, so it often comes down to the experience and how you interact with them and how they make you feel, as wishy-washy as that sounds. And the L10 is a dream to take photographs with. It feels good to take photographs with, and that is very important. The V1 doesn't necessarily feel bad to take photographs with, it's just a very stripped down, minimal style. It's more like a mini cinema camera than a mini photo camera. And I do love having the ultra-wide lens at my disposal. I took these photographs at the museum and I just think they wouldn't have looked half as good with a 24mm. So I do like the versatility of that lens, but I also like the versatility of the L10 lens on the other side. Pros and cons to both. Now, if you take a look at the size of these, it is possibly a bit baffling because the L10 has a smaller sensor and isn't video centric, and it's bigger. So how is the V1 so small and still quite feature rich? And I think the answer to that is that it has active thermal management. You've got little fans built in varying places. What this means is the heat that this tiny thing generates is dissipated. Whereas with the L10, which has passive thermal management, which basically means it's just big and the heat spreads around the camera, you need it to be a certain size in order for the heat to dissipate. If you stick all this spec into something so small, it will overheat. Thermal management is great for keeping the form factor down, and also it means that you can have unlimited recording, whereas you can't on the L10, though I have had some pretty long stretches in sunshine and it's not been a problem. But again, the L10 is not designed for that, so it makes sense. Super duper plus point for the Canon V1 today. I do have both with me, but we're due another heat wave in the UK and it's roasting and there's not a cloud in the sky. So doing all these talking heads today, I've picked the V1 over the L10 just because of the thermal management. Probably would have been fine. Not a risk I want to take. I don't want to be out here any longer than necessary. I am melting. What about photo quality? They're both cracking. I took some gig photographs with the Canon V1 and I love them. I'm going to get one printed on my wall actually, I think. I absolutely love the L10 as well. I got some really nice photographs around Japan and around, you know, everyday life stuff. It's really, really nice. Both of the RAW files have tons of push and pull in them and you can customize them very easily. And in terms of ease of use, I found them both to be excellent. I think Panasonic have always made very simple to use cameras, and the menus are some of my favourites. But I had the Canon originally on loan and I set it up, and even within a few days it felt like I'd always owned it. So when I took that one back and then bought my own copy and set it all up again, it was no bother whatsoever. It's a very frictionless experience, and that's the word that I keep coming back to with the V1 and the L10. They're both just frictionless. They're designed to just not get in the way of you taking good photo or good video, respectively. Weight-wise, the V1 is also lighter. It's 426 grams versus 508 grams with the L10, which I suppose makes sense because, you know, that L10 has a viewfinder and a bigger battery, etc, etc. But I do wish I could wave a magic wand and make the L10 V1 sized. That would just be... But anyway, it is what it is, what it is. I found the autofocus on both to be brilliant. And I've seen some reviews saying that they haven't enjoyed the autofocus on the L10, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's so good. It's the same sort of algorithms and sensor, etc. as the GH7, which is brilliant. I have absolutely no problems relying on either of these cameras. They're rock solid. So both are very good at tracking me. You can see the eye tracking on the Canon is really good. And then on the Panasonic side, I've got face tracking on. Also very sticky, very good. The funny thing about face detect is it's that sticky that if you're in the frame, it will stay on you. And quite right, because that's what you've told it to do. And both of them will do it. So in order to get it to shift, you've got to sort of hide your own face, which is why a lot of hashtag influencers do this. But once the face is out of frame, it's super snappy. I was going to have a very non-committal ending to this video until I looked up the used prices of the V1. Because price is a factor, let's be honest. This is a hobby, or it might be an additional camera, or it might be the start of a creative journey for someone, and budget is important. So, new, the titanium version of the L10, because let's be honest, we're all going to buy the titanium one, is £1,399 currently. Which is, you know, it's new, it's shiny, it makes sense, the world's on fire, but it is quite a premium price. The V1, conversely, used, is around 700 quid. So literally, if you got yourself a bargain, like half the price. And there is so much camera in there for that money, and so much crossover. Yes, the L10 has an EVF. It's stylish, it's gorgeous, the lens is arguably a lot better, it's got real-time look, etc, etc, etc. It is brilliant, and if I had to only own one, I would pick the L10. It's just special. Depending on what you're going to use it for, the V1 can get you a heck of a long way there for half the price, with built-in ND filters, which you can also use creatively for photography. Something to think about, isn't it? Now, new, I must say, new, the prices aren't dramatically different. I think it's around 950 quid for the V1 versus, you know, you could get the black or the silver one for 1,299 on the L10 size. So there's not that much difference if you're buying new, but the used market, I use it all the time. My V1 is indeed used, and I did get it for around £700. So I think it's a great option. So what do you think? Do you think the L10 is worth the extra money? Or do you think the V1 is a bargain? Let me know in the comments which one you would pick. And I have dedicated reviews of both of these, so definitely check those out next.